Your first presenter is David Dominy, owner of GPS Central. GPS Central is an online business specializing in GPS and related products with an emphasis on the recreational and marine GPS market. The wholesale division serves business, government, other institutions, and NGOs. We are very pleased to have David with us today to present his business case. Your second presenter today is Chris Goward, co-founder and president of Widerfunnel. Chris has been a marketing strategist and entrepreneur since he began his first web business in 1994. He developed Widerfunnel's methodologies, including the LIFT model and Kaizen, and is in demand globally as a speaker. He also has an upcoming conversion optimization book by Wiley. You should sign up at the Widerfunnel blog at widerfunnel.com/blog to be the first in line and have a chance to win a copy when the book is released. Chris will now start us off into today's content. Chris?
Great. Thanks, Roxanne. Thanks for the introduction, and get right into the content. I'd like to start with just one slide to give you some context for who Widerfunnel is, since some of you probably we haven't met with yet, and to give you perspective on the approach we're taking and what we're going to talk about today, which is all about conversion optimization and how to get results with conversion optimization and avoid those mistakes that Roxanne mentioned. So Widerfunnel is, all we do is conversion optimization. We do conversion testing and optimizing websites, and we do that by starting with analytics and developing conversion strategy, really understanding the business and voice of customer and how people are using the website to create experiments that get powerful results and drive the business results forward. So we do that by creating hypotheses, designing copywriting, implementing A/B and multivariate tests. We also do unbiased paid search audits that we found to be valuable because we don't do paid search marketing or paid search management, and taking a third-party unbiased perspective, our clients have actually been asking us to separate that as a separate product and have been getting a lot of value out of that. So that gives perspective on the approach we take. It's all about conversion optimization testing. And so far, knock on wood here, every one of our clients has had a conversion rate lift of between 10% and 407% for our multi-test clients. So really happy about that. And essentially, though, the takeaway is that what we do is deliver customer insights and profitable results. So that's all I'll talk about, Widerfunnel, and then let's get right into the content by starting with a little bit of a warm-up. So we always like to start by testing our conversion skills and getting into the context of what we're saying here. Let's take a look at an example here with SAP. This was an experiment. They came to us needing to improve their lead generation from their landing pages for one of their software products, Crystal Decisions, and their world-leading reporting software. This was a paid search landing page with significant branding restrictions that we had to work within, and the goal was for more trial software downloads. So this is a quick example here, and what I'll do is I'll show you the variations, or a couple of the variations tested, and get you to vote on which one you think had the highest lead generation, and then we'll take a look at the results. So this was the control page that they came to us with, and you can see it's a fairly simple layout. The goal is to try and get more people to click on that first link on the page to download a free trial of Crystal Reports. And so the process we went through is to analyze the page, understand the visitor, and create hypotheses and then test them. So I'll skip through all of that for now, and we'll get into that detail in a moment. But let's just take a look, first of all, at the variations tested and then have a vote. So the first variation, variation A, you'll see what we did is modify the iFlow by anchoring the image with the header, rewrote the copy, so there's a strong headline and value proposition copy, and the call to action, and as well as features below. Now, what happens when you click on that button is you get the form to fill out to download the software. Now, your first thought might be, wow, that's a long form. And that was our thought as well. Unfortunately, we were restricted in, we couldn't change any of the form fields. We couldn't reduce form fields or change the design or layout of them at all. So that was just a parameter we had to work within. And then we created a variation B where it was the same content and value proposition, but we had integrated the form within the same page. So it's really a question of, in this case, an isolation between the two-step form and the single-step integrated form. So what I'm going to do is ask Roxanne to open up a poll where you can vote on which one you think had the highest lead gen conversion rate. So go ahead and open that up, Roxanne, if you can. And you can go ahead and vote on which one you think won and generated more leads for their sales team. Wow, we see the results fluctuating here, back and forth. There's a bit of a horse race going on, so that's interesting. Go ahead and vote, and don't be shy. We won't bite. So, okay, variation A is the two-step form. Variation B is the single-step. And great, we see the votes coming in. Looks like most people have voted now. Go ahead, you can close that down, Roxanne, and let us know the results.
It is actually completely even.
A 50-50 split. Well, there we go. That's interesting. So we can close that down and take a look at what actually happened. Interesting. Okay, a 50-50 split. So imagine yourself, right? You're sitting in your boardroom and your agency presents the two new designs for your landing page. How do you choose which one goes live on your website, your important landing page where you're driving this expensive paid search? Well, a lot of people are using the HIPPO method, right? The highest paid person's opinion. Other people are using, the black turtleneck method, where whoever is sitting around the boardroom table wearing their sunglasses in the boardroom, right? They're the ones that point at the one they like best, and that one goes live. Well, fortunately, in this case, we tested it and found variation A actually increased their lead generation conversion rate by 32.5%. Now, imagine what it would be like to get a 32% more leads for the same traffic levels. And now, what you should understand is that these are free leads. Right, you've already paid for them to come to your landing page. Now, if you were to increase your paid search effectiveness by 32%, well, that's great. You're getting 32 more clicks, but you still have to pay for each one of those clicks. With conversion optimization, every additional lead, every additional sale is essentially free, and it's ongoing. So that's the power of conversion optimization. What we want to talk about today is the situation that we're in today is that websites are not working as they should for most companies. What we see, recent research, excuse me, is showing that less than a quarter of website owners are satisfied with their conversion rates. That means that more than 3/4 are dissatisfied with their website's ability to achieve their business goals. So how can we fix this? Right? That's where conversion optimization plays a role. That's why it's become so popular over the past few years and why Conversion Conference and other conferences have sprung up to meet that need. Conversion optimization is the most effective way of increasing your web-generated revenue and leads on an ongoing basis. Yet, what we found is that you get much higher ROI by investing in a CRO strategy than putting the same amount of money into driving more traffic. Right? You don't just need more traffic, you need more conversions and sales. But the problem is that many companies are getting into conversion optimization but are falling into some common traps, and that's what we're really talking about today, is how to avoid the top 10 conversion optimization mistakes and get higher sales. So we're going to look at it. It's a bit of a unique setup today. David and I will show how GPS Central was able to achieve a significant lift in sales and how they avoided the top 10 mistakes. So we have a lot to cover, and we'll start with David, who will explain GPS Central's business need. So,
thanks, Chris. I'm at a bit of a disadvantage only because I got kicked out of the site itself, but our primary motivation was that our site is a well-established long-term site. It's been around for 10 years. It had traffic of, at the time, I think somewhere between 3,000 and 5,000 visitors a day. So it was a very active, unique visitors a day. So it was a very active site, and we were, I think, pretty good at SEO. We spent a lot of time thinking about how we would go about that, and when you looked at our Google rankings for any of the relevant keywords and searches, we consistently came up top. And so it really seemed to us that there had to be some low-hanging fruit around conversions, because at 3,000 to 4,000 people a day, half a percentage lift in conversions really seemed to be the big opportunity for us.
Great, right. So, no, that's good. David, if what I'll do is I'll just let you know when your slide is on then, if you're if you're not able to see the slide. So it does give you a bit of a disadvantage there.
Yeah.
But that, that leads right into conversion optimization mistake number one. So what we want to talk about there, your identification of the business need, and so what you found is you were able to avoid the first very common conversion optimization mistake, which is confusing a software vendor or just software as a solution versus a conversion strategy. And so what David was able to do, he and his team knew that they didn't just need to buy testing and optimization software. What they needed was a solid testing process and a plan. So we're sometimes so used to thinking about software companies providing their own services that it's sometimes hard to think of it another way. So I had an analogy here that I thought might be just an interesting thought starter. Thinking about Honda, they make great cars. They make world-class cars, high-quality cars. But you don't hire Honda to teach your daughter how to drive, right? Because quality manufacturing of vehicles doesn't equal defensive driving techniques. They have mastered how to create cars effectively. But it's a completely different skill set to understand how to use those cars effectively. So why would you think that a testing and targeting software vendor can build your best conversion optimization strategy? They can't. Software companies have different goals than yours, and so they should. Let's compare the goals, right? Your goals as a website owner are to generate more leads, sell more products, right, or one of the two or a combination, and then ultimately get more revenue. A software vendor's goals, of course, is to build better software, right? They make great software. That's what they're good at. Sell more of that software, and of course, hook you on their features so you remain a customer. Now, those goals aren't necessarily aligned. So, let's take a look at GPS Central's goals, for example. So, David, your goals. What were your goals for your website and for conversion optimization for that?
Well, I don't have the slide in front of me, Chris, so I can't really read it. Basically what we're trying to do is build our business. It has nothing to do with software in the sense that I think we're pretty well structured in terms of the software piece, but it's how do we get a better spin out of the number of people that come to our store and provide them with the user experience, quite frankly, that they're looking for.
Absolutely, right. No, that's great. And you know what, maybe if you do, I wonder if you have the PowerPoint or the latest version.
Yeah, I'm just looking for that now.
Pull up and take a look, yeah.
Yep.
But no, it's a good point, and so our goal for that was, as you said, to increase the user experience and ultimately the purchases or sales from your perspective, and increase the sales conversion rate. And one of the points there was also that around the goals that originally we had, because of some technical limitations, had an add to cart as a requirement as a goal. And so the first test gave some misleading results, and our teams worked together to improve that test setup and make sure that we had the right goals tracked technically to get the best result for the business. And so that leads into conversion optimization mistake number two, which is tracking the wrong goals. So take a look at it this way. Here's another picture to look at how to track the goals and how we avoided the mistake with GPS Central. Think of yourself having a test page. Say it's a landing page or a website where you're testing different variations. a lot of times you may have actions within that page that you want people to do. You might have a button to add a product to a cart, or you might have a button to request a quote, or to lead towards a lead generation form fill or a download or something like that. So you could track that action on the page as a goal. And that's called micro-conversion tracking, and a lot of people are promoting micro-conversions. The challenge is that if your actual revenue-producing goal is somewhere else on your website, there may not be a correlation between that micro-conversion tracking and the ultimate conversion. And so it can actually lead to significantly misleading results. So with GPS Central, what we did is, even though on the test page, the goal didn't immediately happen. The revenue wasn't produced directly on that page that people first visited. It happened down the funnel somewhere, where someone added a cart or researched products and looked at comparing various products, and then they added a product to the cart, and then they went through the cart and had enough motivation to actually make a purchase. So it was actually revenue-producing goals, and in that way, we made sure that the results actually generated revenue lift, and not just conversion rate to a micro-conversion. Now, there were also some unique test requirements that GPS Central had for us, and there were 3 test requirements that we had to work within and had to consider. So David, are you able to pull up the slides?
I haven't found them, Chris. Maybe
okay.
Roxanne could resend them to me.
Okay, no problem.
Great. Sorry.
It's fine. So the first requirement was working within the new site design that you had. And so maybe you can speak to that, or the context of the new site design and how we had to work within that.
Well, I think there were, I remember kind of 2 primary issues around that. One was that we had put a lot of effort into developing a brand new website, and a lot of money, I might add, and really it came about as something that we thought in our, back to your black hat analogy, we thought in kind of our best assessment made lots of sense. And combining that with the fact that we had really 10 years of SEO effort engaged in that, it was really important that the site design not be tampered with in a substantive way, because we didn't want to lose our SEO rankings, and a lot of thought had gone into that. So that was really the primary issue for us in doing the testing and selecting a revised format.
Right. Great. So, that leads into conversion optimization mistake number 3, is relying just on web designers for website strategy. And web designers are great at knowing how to design for aesthetics and design principles, right? And the question is, of course, how many of those principles have been tested for their impact on sales and lead generation? They're tested with people with general aesthetics, but we've seen so many cases where newly redesigned websites are launched, and only to find that they immediately hurt conversion rates, and sometimes with terrible results. In fact, we had a company that came to us recently, having redesigned their site, and after flipping the switch, they found an immediate 40% drop in their conversion rates, and that's not an uncommon story. So, there was another result or requirement that we had to work within, and that was to maintain GPS Central's SEO rankings, SEO results. And I think you mentioned that earlier, David, as well, that you had great SEO, and you had to make sure that we weren't going to do anything within this testing to hurt that those results, right? And so
it's a bit of the yin and yang, right? So if you have great SEO, you get lots of traffic, but you can't, you don't get a great return on investment unless you're matching lots of traffic with the conversion outcome, and that was really the piece that we were completely missing.
Yeah, and it's a common situation that websites that have great SEO results a lot of times are built, focused on that, right? And it's all about all the little tactics to get SEO lift and improvement, and sometimes the experience on the site is secondary. And so you're right. There's the balance there that we have to play. And so the mistake number 4 is harming your SEO by doing conversion optimization incorrectly. Proper conversion optimization actually doesn't hurt SEO, and there's no reason it should. But in fact, when it's done correctly, the principles of conversion optimization and SEO are very well aligned, and it can even enhance your SEO by providing new content, updated content that Google likes to see. But if you use the wrong types of tools and processes, you can hurt SEO inadvertently. For example, if by using AdWords, a lot of people are using AdWords right now, or off-site redirection methods to test landing pages by redirecting to different landing pages. But that can lead to things like duplicate content penalties, and there are other downsides of using AdWords or other tools for testing that are off-site. So it also limits you to a single traffic source, and misses the rest of your website conversion opportunities. And we couldn't have done that at all with GPS Central the way we had structured the test, where we wanted to include all traffic. And also, making sure that technically we're following best practices, where after a test is complete, making sure that the alternative variations have 301 redirects set up, so that any inadvertent linking people were doing of those variations that we're testing is being passed back to the rest of the site, or to the control page, the new winning page, to maintain that SEO link juice. So you want to make sure that the SEO structure is set up properly. And the next mistake here is getting overwhelmed with the learning curve on the technical side when getting set up, started with testing. For many companies, the software selection for conversion optimization is the first consideration, and some optimization software is unnecessarily complex. And for GPS Central, there was actually a risk here because of also their complex technical environment, right? There was, and there's also newer testing software options that simplify the integration with one-time site-wide installations, for example. So you want to make sure that you do your proper research on the testing tool and get unbiased advice on the right tools to choose, because some of the leading tools out there are actually technically complex. Which relates to one of the third test requirement that we had, which was to deliver full-service tests that work with the NetSuite backend that GPS Central was on. And so we were able to work within that, work with David's teams, and make sure that we had solved those technical challenges and could get the results and focus on the outcome of what we were aiming for, and not get bogged down in the technical details, but keep our eye on the ball.
Yeah, Chris, just a bit of a kudo to you and your folks. Our experience with NetSuite is we've been using it for several years now, and I think we were probably one of the early adopters, at least in our space, of a cloud-based solution to certainly the back end. But it's not particularly user-friendly in terms of attachments and third-party advice and use, and we've run into lots of issues where we've had to build workarounds. And quite frankly, there are very few people that are kind of clever enough to figure out how to integrate that along with a website that we host and have designed and built ourselves. So there's it's a complex issue to kind of sort through the integration issues between our website, NetSuite, and any kind of third-party app, or even the testing protocols that we use. So that went exceptionally well, and it was quite counter to our normal experience.
Oh, great, yeah, and it was it was a good collaboration, certainly in that case, and I think even though there were some technical challenges in getting that working, it was in the end. We'll take a look at the results in a moment, but it's worth the effort to get it set up, and once you've got that technical solution solved, it can be reused in future tests. So,
yep, correct. Yep.
All right. So now we want to focus and start moving into how we actually were able to run the test and get the results, and we'll take a look at the comparison of what we tested and how it worked and the framework that we used to come up with hypotheses. So first of all, though, conversion optimization mistake number 6 is very common. Many get into testing without a proper process for planning and execution. And I can tell you from experience, having developed the process that we're using, is that developing efficient and reliable system for conversion optimization takes a lot of practice to refine it. And so, people often ask me, like, why do you follow such a stringent process for testing? Why do you have this structure involved? Can't you just throw out variations and test them and see what works? Well, it's not. It doesn't work that way. It's not that simple. And in fact, in last year, a few months ago, eConsultancy released a report, the conversion optimization report, showed that a structured process has the biggest impact on conversion rate satisfaction. What we see is that, I'm showing the chart here, that companies with a structured approach to conversion optimization are twice as likely to have seen large increases in sales as those without a structured approach. And so the discipline of following a structured approach actually has the highest correlation to large increases in sales. So that's why, and that's the answer to why do we follow such a structured approach. So, I don't have time on this presentation to get into all the details of the 7-step system that we use, but we just did a webinar on it actually last week or a couple weeks ago, and so we'll give you the slides of this as well if you're following along, and you can follow that link as well to watch that free webinar that goes into more detail on the process, and that's something you'll definitely want to take advantage of. But one of the things I want to highlight in there is the first step in that system, which is the lift analysis. And again, I'll briefly go into this because the other webinar goes into a little more detail on it. But what we've developed is a framework to analyze pages as part of creating hypotheses. And we use that with GPS Central to analyze the page from the visitor experience and create hypotheses that will get results. So briefly, the way it works is we've got the 6 conversion factors that influence conversion rates. And the first one is the value proposition. And that's the core set of perceived costs and benefits in the visitor's mind for taking an action. And it includes tangibles and intangibles, things like the brand, graphic design, credibility, testimonials, which lend to credibility. But even just graphic design can add value proposition. Things like offers also, of course, enhance value proposition if you've got discount offers or other sorts of things. And how you present those offers can enhance value proposition. The value proposition really determines the potential for your conversion rate lift. And then the rest of the factors really surround that and enhance or detract from that value proposition presentation. Things like relevance of the presentation, relevance to the source media. If you just look at your incoming keywords or ads and match that content in the headline, that can increase relevance and increase conversion rates. Clarity of the presentation is also important. And I'll show you an example in a moment of how all these things work in the analysis. But clarity includes clarity of the eye flow, clarity of the copywriting and the graphic design, clarity of the imagery that's used, what size of images should be used in an e-commerce case, and clarity of the call to action and pricing and shipping. All of those things play a role. And then there are factors that reduce the power of your value proposition, things like anxiety, which is anything on the page that creates uncertainty in the visitor's mind for taking action, or things that are missing from the page. But you don't just take tips and tricks that you'll hear about anxiety. For example, there's a lot of people talking about security indicators like HackerSafe and McAfee symbols, and that if you're paying for those, you should make them as prominent as possible. But what we found is that's not the case in actually testing them. In one test in particular, we put security icons, the HackerSafe symbol, right near a call to action for an e-commerce store, and actually reduced their sales by making it too prominent. And what happened is it created anxiety in the visitor's mind, at a time when they weren't asking for that answer. So it was posing questions that they weren't asking themselves, making them think about anxiety and security when, if they're interested enough to worry about that, they can look and find out if it's HackerSafe approved or something. So maybe putting it in the footer would have been a better idea, or somewhere else, or later in the process when they're actually thinking about the transaction. Distraction or a lack of focus is also a problem, and then also urgency. So we can test with all of these 6 factors to maximize conversion rates. So let's take a look at the example of GPS Central's page. So this was the original page, and it was actually the home page for GPS Central, and what we wanted to do was analyze it to create hypotheses to test and consider the new website design that had been created, but to find out how to integrate the two and actually increase conversions, adapting some of the elements of the new design without hurting sales, which the new design, the way it was structured, we believed was likely to do if we had just gone and implemented it right away. So analyzing the page showed several factors, which I'll briefly go through and then show you the variations that were actually tested. So some elements of distraction were identified here. There's some clutter in the header area. Relevance without having a strong headline that's clearly tied to the traffic source is one of the points that we analyzed. Some clarity issues around the colors and links and banners and font treatments that created some disjointedness to the eye flow and some clarity around which are links, and visually creating clarity on what to click on next. Some clarity in the differentiation between the products. So there's featured products and offers and other information in the list that didn't have high differentiation. There's some urgency factors here that sale items and promos weren't prominently displayed. Some distraction with the online retail store information, map and dealer links, taking visitors off the site, brand logos, linking to different pages, product names below the featured products that looked like links. So some various things that we wanted to clean up on the page and create hypotheses to test.
I'm almost embarrassed to look at this now, Chris.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting when we come into these types of situations. We're doing a lift analysis. There's a balance there, right? Where GPS Central has been a successful business for many years,
right.
and so you've done a lot of things right with creating a successful website that drives sales. And so we always want to give credit where credit's due to creating a successful business. Our job is to find problems, and that's what we do is find problems in any website.
Well, I think you actually found opportunities, so I think I'd look at it that way.
That's right, and so and that's what it's all about is changing those opportunities, or those you could say turning weaknesses into strengths, or problems into opportunities. And that's really the second step in the process, is taking that lift analysis and flipping them around. So saying, for example, if there's a factor of relevance that says the copywriting isn't tied into the traffic source, well, a strength related to that would be adding a headline that tied into the ad copy that's driving traffic will lift sales, and that then becomes a hypothesis we can test. And so that's the second step in the 7-step process. And again, I won't go through all the details of the process, but that's the most important part, is creating hypotheses. And then the hard job of the strategist is to decide which of those hypotheses should be isolated and which ones should be clustered to create the actual test variations, so we don't end up with infinite variations. And so that leads to common mistake number 7, which is testing minutia on the page. And what we find, in every one of your cases, I'm sure if you're on this call, you have thousands of beautiful visitors coming to your website every day, just waiting to tell you which types of layouts, designs, and content will persuade them to act and to become a lead and to buy more products. And what are you using those visitors for? What are you testing with them? And if you're just testing the typical same old buttons and headlines, you're really wasting that opportunity, you're wasting that traffic, and so that's a common mistake. That's common mistake number 7, and how we avoided that with the case of GPS Central was to test dramatically. And we structured the test as an ABN test with dramatically different challenger variations, rather than just creating a huge test with many, many variations that would take forever to get results from. And related to that is mistake number 8, and that is starting with conversion or with multivariate testing. And mistake 8 is a common one, a lot of times because the conversion optimization software vendors really promote multivariate as a core part of their functionality, and for good reason. It's a complex piece of the software that needs to be developed. And so we avoided that by starting with ABN testing. We used a dramatic, ABN approach. There are a lot of benefits to using ABN testing over multivariate, and I get into that on the blog where there's more time to get into all those details. And you can probably find that by Googling, Widerfunnel AB versus multivariate testing. Should come up with that. But essentially the problem right now in the industry has been a false promise of multivariate testing. And that promise has been that you can throw any weak ideas into the tool and come out with brilliant results. And in our experience, that's not the case. In fact, the more effort we put into defining the hypotheses to isolate and test, the better results we get, and the faster we achieve results, and the faster we can iteratively move on to the next good ideas.
Just to reinforce that point, Chris, one of our many learnings out of the online space is that your business strategy will speak a lot to kind of what portals you select, and with respect to testing, what makes sense. And I think what happens when you get all of these fancy tools is that people like us don't ask the question, who's our target market? What are their preferences, and what's our business strategy? What are the things that we focus on? And so I think in the absence of that clear sense of business strategy, it's really easy to get sucked into we'll test everything and then we'll pick something. So I think that really summarizes for me the connection between strategy and the way in which you test, and then of course present the website. Right.
Yeah. No, good. That's good context for that. And I think often we rely on software and sort of this promise, whatever type of software it is, and we think that that's the solution, that's the silver bullet, and we just implement it, and magical things will happen. We'll implement product recommendation engine, and all of a sudden sales will boost. But you're right, without thinking about how it relates to the business strategy, it can produce false starts and not deliver the potential of what the software can deliver.
Well, and to be specific, it can cause you to go a whole bunch of different routes that may or may not have any use to you. Right. So that's why I like your approach. It's way more focused.
Great. So let's take a look at the variations we actually tested, and we'll review these, some of the variations here, and then we'll actually vote again on which one we think won, and take a look at the results and some insights that came out of that. So the first one, variation A, called category rows, and what we've done here is emphasize the features and hot deals and top sellers in a 3-part banner at the top of the page. So the first thing is to get them into the best deals that are happening right now. And then below that, there are all the categories of products presented in rows. So it was a longer page with lots of products for people to choose from, and they can really, without having to have too many clicks through to different products or category pages, they can quickly scan through and find the types of products they want. Variation B was a completely different approach, where we had the category tiles above the fold. So we had 2 rows of 8 tiles that, and then below that, there were tabs with the top sellers in a tabbed layout. So a shorter page that people could either click through to find the categories they want or scroll down to top sellers. And variation C was called top sellers, or where what we did is emphasized the top sellers with the categories in a left column. So you could select the category you want in your left column, or there's a lot of top sellers that we'd emphasized here, the hypothesis being that showing the top sellers will appeal to more of the visitors and get them straight into what they're looking for ultimately. And then below that, you'll see below the top sellers, this is a view of the full page. If they scroll down, they would see the tiles as well to get into the categories. So now, conversion optimization mistake number 9 is testing too many variations. And of course, we avoided that one by being very focused on dramatically different approaches that would lead to hypotheses that could be built on and a higher watermark for testing. But many people, when they start out with testing, get discouraged in their first test by running too many variations. It's very common. It's probably one of the most common mistakes that we hear from software vendors who are trying to overcome and educate the people that just come in there to use the tool about how to focus on the variations you want to test. And that's actually the most difficult job of a conversion strategist. It's not coming up with the ideas to test. Ideas are limitless. It's actually focusing the test on the most important variations and choosing what to isolate. That's the most important job we find of a strategist. So we avoided that, and here are 3 variations that were tested, and what we'll get you to do is vote on which one you think had the highest sales, and then we'll take a look at the results. So Roxanne, if you want to open up the poll again. We have variation A, which focuses on hot sellers, and top sellers featured products above the fold, and the categories below. Variation B was the tiled approaches on the top, and variation C is a grid of the top sellers with categories below. So go ahead and put your vote in there. We see the votes coming in. For variation A was the featured hot products, top sellers, and a feature banner. B was the tiles, and C was the grid of the top sellers products in the center column. Okay, so you want to close that down, Roxanne, and take a look at the results?
We had a last-minute surge for images and tabs.
Yep.
At 13%, with top sellers right behind at 12%, and category rose at 8% of the votes.
Excellent. So it looks like B and C were neck and neck there for the results, and that's good. That's a good vote because variation B actually was the winner, and with a 15% lift in sales. Unfortunately, if you voted for C or A, it did not have that much of a significant lift, but variation B did. And so what we changed here was interesting. Adding the visual navigation of the product categories and focusing on that drove people into selecting the right product category for them in a visual way, and got them into ultimately to the product they wanted. And now remember, this was a conversion that went all the way through to sale. So it wasn't just clicking on something on the page and getting to a product. It was actually all the way through to a lift in sales. And so, I think one of the overarching changes here was reducing distraction. Didn't have the columned approach with a left or a right column, and minimized the amount of links on the page, and had a visual navigation approach to getting people to the right products.
Where I think there were a couple of kind of interesting features of both the process and the outcome, and one was the process. I've forgotten exactly how long we ran the test for, but I think it was 6 weeks. Chris, we were running it, and it was fair to say that there was a fair bit of movement between the different pages over that period of time. Like, it wasn't like the result that we saw in the first week ended up being reflective of what the total period would. So I think having enough traffic and spending enough time at this was a major factor in picking the right one. And then the second point that I would make here is that if you look at our competitors, and in fact many of the sites that purport to be e-commerce friendly, this one's a lot simpler and a lot cleaner than anything that typically the people that are building these sites, because I think there's a propensity to want to try and put everything on that landing page and not let your site work together. So those were two pretty significant learnings for us in the course of the process you put us through.
Mm-hmm. Oh, great. Well, that's good commentary. Yeah, and that actually leads well into conversion optimization mistake number 10. Although it wasn't, the result with GPS Central with that test was great. A 15% lift in sales with statistically significant results, I mean, is fantastic. That isn't always the result of every single test. And right. So the mistake number 10 is giving up after inconclusive results. So in the case where you don't get those kind of wins right away, or as you're saying, David, when early results are maybe inconclusive, and you're waiting to see which one's actually going to end up winning, and there may be a horse race and things switch up during the test. You don't want to. There's 2 points there. You don't want to give up too early or stop the test too early. But even when you do, if you do run a test that doesn't produce significant results, or we have to make the decision that this doesn't look like it's ever going to finish, that's not a wasted test. And what I'm going to show here is a different type of result that we got with a different company that we worked with, where what we're seeing now is a test result after several weeks of testing and many visitors arriving to the page, and we just had to make a call on this and say, you know what, this is not ever going to achieve the result we want. It's not going to win. One of the variations is ahead, one of them is behind, one of them is just slightly edging out ahead, but it's never going to finish. And you might be tempted to be discouraged by a result like that and say, why are we not getting conversion rate lift? Why isn't it working? But it for us as strategists, it's actually a good result, because every test result is a good result. We're learning something. And what we can do through the process that we're following is analyze even these inconclusive tests to gain consumer behavior insights and understand why we got this type of result, because it can lead to better results in the next round. So what I'll show you now is the next round for that same company, where based on the insights of the earlier tests, we were able to plan another test that ended up giving triple-digit lift in their business results. So don't be discouraged by tests that are inconclusive or don't complete or even produce losing results, because the insights that you gain from that can always be used in creating better results in the next rounds. All right, so hopefully those were helpful in things to avoid, mistakes that were made. Now what we've got, I've got actually a bonus mistake number 11 that I'll talk about afterward, and we've got some QA that we're going to start. But first of all, I want to make sure that we get to the special announcements and free offers. So the first one is that we've launched a website just recently that's a free website. It's at conversionskills.com. And what you can do is, if you visit there, you can test your conversion skills with a similar approach that we've done today. You can go and see actual test results and vote on which ones you think won, and actually view the full case studies, download them, and find out what actually worked in those scenarios. So, and it's totally free. You can go to conversionskills.com and take a look at the case studies. There's also an offer here for a free page evaluation. We've got 10 time slots available for this webinar attendee group. And so to qualify, just send an email to hello@widerfunnel.com and tell us the URL of the page you'd like evaluated. If you've got a minimum 30,000 unique visitors per month, you could qualify. And again, it's first come, first served basis, so go ahead and send an email to hello@widerfunnel.com, and we'll do that. So now what I'll do is open up the questions. If you have questions, you can go ahead and enter them in the general chat down below, and we'll make sure we get to those. And we're also going to have a blog post that answers all the questions we don't get to as well in the next coming days. So if you go to and sign up for the blog, you'll make sure that you get the answers to all of those. It's at widerfunnel.com/blog. And we've only got a few more minutes here, so I just want to get to one. Just take a look at the questions, see if there's something quickly that we can get to. How much traffic do you need to do your testing? Well, that typically we can do testing on high or low traffic websites, and it really depends on your return on effort. So if you have a high average order value, then you can test on lower traffic websites and get a good return on your effort as well. If you've got a high traffic website, you can test with even lower average order values and still get a great return on it. There's another question that just came in here from Cheryl. Would you explain ABN testing? I've heard of AB, but what's the N? Yeah, good question. I should have explained that. N just refers to any number of variations that are tested against. So an A/B test we would think of as testing 2 variations, a very simple test. But we call it ABN when we're testing multiple variations. So it could be any number. That's what N can refer to. So. But it's usually fewer variations than a multivariate, where we're splitting or isolating many elements within the page to isolate or to vary independently. So hope that answers that question. And another question here. When you look at conversion rate, do you look at conversion rate for a given landing page or the total conversion rate if the user links through to another part of your site? Yeah, good question. So that's something that that I was getting at earlier with the micro conversions, where we want to make sure that we're tracking the conversions all the way through as close to revenue as possible, and that's for conversion optimization how you want to track. Now, what's important here to understand is that tracking for analytics is different than tracking for conversion optimization. When you're looking at analytics, your goal in analytics is to understand all of the behavior of your visitors, and that's where micro-conversions are actually very important, to understand how many people are clicking on social media likes, for example, or clicking on a button to find out more about your service, or clicking on your category links versus your product links. So how are people using the website? And that can lead to hypothesis to test. But when you're actually testing for conversion optimization, your goal should be the one that drives business results. And that's going to be generating leads or increasing sales. So, so don't confuse analytics goals with conversion optimization goals. And that's perhaps another common conversion mistake that I could add to the next presentation. But that is a very common question.
I think so. Just a thought on that, Chris, if I may. That when we were working through this, there is clearly a prioritization from the customer's end, saying you've got landing pages that have a lot more traffic hitting them initially. So there's low-hanging fruit by focusing on those high-volume pages that people go to. And I know we talked lots about kind of what's the hierarchy of pages that we would optimize, and I think you really need to kind of throw that into the puzzle.
For sure, yeah. No, that's a good point. And often what we can do, as you've said, is test on those high traffic areas, and really glean those insights out of those high traffic pages, and then you can actually test even simpler tests based on those insights on the lower traffic pages, and get to results faster than if you were just to try and start with all of the variations you want to test on the low traffic ones. So, the high traffic areas of the site are gold. Those are the places where you can really understand your customer and their drivers and the value proposition to emphasize, and the what they're most interested in, and then use those insights for the rest of the site. Another question from. Yep. Go ahead.
Sorry, Chris. The only other point that I'd make was one we talked about the other day, and that really was not to view this process in isolation, because I think the temptation is to kind of say we're working on the technology, we're going to optimize that. But in our case, we do a fair bit of email and have a very active newsletter program that supports our sales activities. And we took the learnings from this process and applied them very much to the design and the way that we go about executing on those two different portals. And so I would encourage anybody that's looking at their site and saying we're going to utilize this process, that step back and say, okay, well, how else are we using online media to contact our customers or potential customers, and how might the learnings that we garner from site design in this process be applied kind of in those other areas?
Right. Okay. So yeah, what you're saying is that the learning from that test actually improved your other marketing activities, your newsletters and other customer touch points as well.
Oh, absolutely. And I think you've got to look at this stuff in the context of what's your marketing strategy overall. So yes, just good data. Great. Well, we're at the bottom of the hour now, and people are asking about the presentation deck, and yes, we will be sending out links to download that as well. And I want to leave you with conversion optimization mistake number 11, and that is not taking advantage of Widerfunnel's free page evaluation offer. So that one's a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek mistake, but make sure when we're giving a valuable offer like that, it would be foolish to avoid it. So go ahead and send your URL and traffic volume to hello@widerfunnel.com, and you could qualify for the free evaluation. And a lot of people have actually been giving us feedback that these free evaluations have really been helping them to crystallize their business goals, and have actually been, when compared to other evaluations and audits that are out there, we've actually heard from people that they're getting as much value from these free evaluations as they're getting from other $700 audits that other people are providing out there. So it's a valuable offer and something to take advantage of, and hopefully you can be one of the first ones to get in there and take advantage of that. So, and I want to thank David as well for taking the time. I know you've got a very busy schedule, and being willing to share this information with the audience and hopefully help them to get results for their businesses as well. My pleasure, and sorry my internet connection went down just as we started, so
no worries.
It accounted for a little bit of anxiety.
Yeah, it happens a lot, and with these things, I'm always encouraged when we go down to meet with companies like Google and we see the AV problems and sometimes connection issues that happen even with the best run technology company. So it happens with everyone. But thank you for your input. It was great. So. And thanks for everyone for attending, and we'll connect with you online as well.